Hello, and welcome to this episode of ARTWaves. ARTWaves is a member program of the 1623 studios here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. ARTWaves delves into the working life of our local arts community here on Cape Ann. My name is Jacqueline Ganem DeFalco, and I'm co-hosting and co-producing this show with Christine Fisher. We're excited to announce that ARTWaves has received over 10,500 views on YouTube since we began, and today I am introducing our 50th artist. Cape Ann ARTWaves is made possible by generous sponsors: Prince Insurance Agency, M. Christine Fisher, visual artist, the McDermott McCarthy team at Gibson Sotheby's International Realty, and the Common Crow Natural Market. We'd also like to acknowledge our partners, C Arts and 1623 Studios. Without all these sponsors and partners, the show just wouldn't go on. And as we look to 2022, we are seeking sponsors to take the show forward. So thank you so much. And one shout out to Steve Lacey and Pat Verga, who provided music for the show. So today I am very excited to introduce you to a very colorful artist. His name is Hans Pundt. So welcome, Hans. From behind one of his fabulous pieces, here he comes. Ta-ta, there he is.
Good morning, Jackie. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you, Hans. I have been looking forward to this for the last 10 years. How do you like that?
That's a long time to wait.
It's a long time. That is really when I first heard your name. So we're going to I'll give a little background here. So Hans is an artist and also an estate horticulturist here on Cape Ann. And he's created beautiful landscapes and intricate artwork since the early 1980s. His work may be discovered in nature and in art venues. He applies his signature vision to his work, whether it's seen in plants or his whimsical collection of collage and sculptural artworks, which I will introduce you to today. He has received awards such as the Passage Flower Show in Salem, the Topsfield Fair, and the Boston Flower Show. His 2- and 3-dimensional artistic works were launched from his Granite Hill studio here in, I think, close to Lanesville, beginning in the late 1990s, and when he was part of the local Colors Co-op. He went on to have his exhibits at local businesses, the Flat Rocks Gallery, Rocky Neck, and the Clark Gallery in Lincoln, Mass., the Glen Urquhart School Gallery, and most recently participated in a Cape Ann Museum outreach project. My first glimpse of Hans was his button-encrusted bust he called Julie, because she was covered in jewels and buttons. And Julie became the mascot of the first Celebrate Wearable Art runway show in 2011, exactly 10 years ago. I fully expect to see much more of Hans as he is transitioning from his full-time work in horticulture to more emphasis on his work in the visual arts. So to prepare you for what you're about to see today with Hans, let me read just a portion of his artistic statement. He says, "I am a visual person stimulated not necessarily by what I see, but how I see it. Today, we are surrounded by so much of the same homogenized stimulus that in order to fulfill my creative spirit, I need to search out the rich visuals that the obscure and unusual provide. I see an unexpected shadow on a wall or a patina produced by the decay metal that enlivens the creative spirit in me. I've been creating collage and assemblage works for many years, not realizing how stimulating and involved the process can and has become. When I am in my studio, I am surrounded by piles of old ephemera and objects that are all talking to each other. And it is my creative spirit that drives the process of combining the various voices to produce a visual story." So with that introduction, Hans, let's find out a little bit about your creative journey, even before you actually put your first piece of art out there in the world for others to see. And I know that some of this has to come from your work as a horticulturist. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And we're also going to, at this point, show some photos of your studio and just your beautiful grounds where your studio is. But let's hear about you. You can go back as far as you want. Okay.
Well, thank you for those questions and thank you for that introduction. Pretty wordy, huh? I was thinking about answering that question, where I started off my creative journey, and I think it goes back when I was born, but more so in high school, in Gloucester High School. It was a time in the 1970s, and growing up, and I had this art class run by a wonderful man, Frank Petronzio. And that art class at that time was a safe haven for us people trying to find our way. Mm-hmm. And I was introduced to a place of creativity where you could do anything you wanted to do. And there were other people doing what they wanted to do. And I was meeting people of like-minded vision of the time. And I think that's where I started off. And after high school, I left the US and went to Europe for a few years, traveled around, and was exposed to Europe and the beautiful architecture and the sights and scenes of Europe. And I ended up living near my aunt and uncle. And my aunt was very creative. She did wonderful crafts, and she introduced me to gardening. She had a beautiful garden, and that was my first introduction to gardening, and also the creative aspect of crafts and so forth. My uncle was an architectural historian in the area. He was in charge of restoring old historic buildings, and so he showed me around. He introduced me to new visions that I hadn't been exposed to.
And where was this, Hans? You said Europe, but that's...
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It was in Germany. That's where my parents were from. They came in to America after the war. So I'm first generation American, and with a great background in European influence. Mm-hmm. My mother was a early childhood educator. She also taught recorder music to many students in the area. So I was exposed to music in that way. My parents were divorced, so my father wasn't around, but he went off to study and become an architectural historian himself, and became a professor for many years out in Seattle and Illinois. So I was exposed to those influences too. And so I think that was the beginning of my horticultural interest and also art.
That's fabulous. Tell us just a little bit about your work as a horticulturalist, because that did consume you for many, many years. And
right.
This was a very large estate, I understand.
Right. I started off working as mowing lawns and so forth. I went to Essex Aggie and had to get a summer job and in the field. And so I started working as a landscaper. And I ended up working for some pretty prestigious properties in Rockport at the time, and started to see a different aesthetic. And then one day I was approached by the owner of this estate that I've been working on. I just retired at the beginning of the year after being there for 38 years.
Wow.
And that estate is probably the most beautiful estate on Cape Ann, and it's very private. And I was instrumental for the last 38 years to putting my touch on that. I didn't know a lot about horticulture at the time, but the owners gave me the freedom to do what I wanted because they liked what I did. And they were also very artistic people. So I was introduced to aesthetics that I had never been exposed to before. And so 38 years there of learning horticulture, creating flower arrangements every day, running a big garden.
Wow.
At one time, there were animals on the property. So it was very, very rich.
What just a beautiful opportunity, Hans.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations to you, though, on now being able to move into this next phase. It's kind of exciting.
It is.
It really is exciting. So let's talk about some of what you said in your artistic statement. You say that we live in a world that is more and more homogenized, and you'd like to see it in new ways through your work. I mean, that can be overwhelming in and of itself. But I'm kind of curious, from the time you have an observation to the time you actually act on it and create a piece, talk about, sort of your process and, what kind of where you begin, and also even how you decide what it is you're going to work on, because you work in a number of media. And I will here like to show a couple of your pieces just to show the difference in your work. So I'm going to show the greasy pole, and then we're going to show the wedding. So I think we can talk about those two different types, but just talk about from the observation to the actual enactment of a piece.
I find myself looking at things all the time in a different way. I might see a street sign and I change the words around just automatically in my mind to make it, funny or edgy. I see objects all the time, and I change them in my mind of how I want to see them in a different, venue. I'm overwhelmed with the creative thoughts that are in my mind sometimes. It gets to me because I can't execute them all. When I go up into my studio, there's so much going on there that I, first of all, don't know where to start. I try to finish things that I've started. It just keeps coming. Horticulturally, I'm always looking to repurpose items and make them a little more interesting. So that's a little bit of that process.
But in terms of like time, do you just let it incubate for a while, or do you just just go in the studio at night and start working on something? I'm just curious what what sort of the gestation period is for that process.
It's some things are automatic, but then when you get to it, it takes a longer time. So I might gather during the COVID lockdown, I was going to beaches every day looking for items. And I'm always looking on the streets for items and things like that. And then I will say, oh, well, that'll make a good eyeball, or that would make a good ear for, I've been making these masks, these sort of figures out of that. I have so much stuff that it's overwhelming that things do come together, and they will, but I don't know if I'm answering the question very well there. But.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, there's no right or wrong here, right? So, but let's get very specific. So we're going to flash up Greasy Pole for a moment. Let's talk about that. This one really spoke to me. Obviously, it's a local favorite. And where is this Greasy Pole these days? Does that reside in your studio, or is it a St. Peter's Club? So.
Wish it was. I had the great fortune to put it in Banana's window.
Oh, fabulous.
I was there during the Greasy Pole, and some nice people from West Gloucester bought it. And they have it hopefully in their living room or wherever they have it. That was a piece I wanted to do, a Gloucester piece. And all the characters that go out to the Greasy Pole, I wanted to duplicate with toys. And so I had a lot of fun doing that piece.
Yeah, I imagine that would be really a conversation piece on so many different levels. Let's talk about the wedding. This is a little bit more complex. I'd like to hear your perspective on this collage. So very different way of expressing yourself. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think I started off doing collage work more than I did assemblage work.
Mm,
But then I can backtrack and say I was doing both of them at the same time, and I think they both are the same sort of
mhm,
combination of elements. The wedding, I believe, is a old photograph. When we go to Europe, and I've been going to Europe for the last 20 years, and unfortunately, this is the second year that we can't go, and it's really driving
mhm,
me crazy. I'd be at a flea market today if I
mhm,
wasn't being interviewed by you.
mhm.
I found that uh, photograph, and I just decided to change it up a little bit. And so I cut out little figures and put them on the faces of the people,
Mhm.
and I've done a bunch of those, like a little
Okay.
series.
I know that you have said in your artistic statement that you really want the viewer to come to their own sort of conclusion. So I'm curious, because I don't know how much of this work has actually been exhibited. Kind of who gets to see this? Like, where do you go to get reactions to your work?
Well, uh, thank goodness we had the wonderful Flat Rocks Gallery up here. And when we moved back from Manchester, we moved back into our house here. Um, they they saw both Lynn's work and my work, and they were very sweet to invite us into many shows there. And that's where I think I got my exposure here in Gloucester. I
Mm-hmm.
also, when I was at Local Colors, that was a great exposure too.
Mm-hmm.
Both venues are closed now, or I'm not part of Local Colors anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do we show? I know
Yeah.
I'm making it. It's
Yeah.
out there. And
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll have more opportunity to, like you said, you mentioned to me earlier that you're on Facebook and Instagram and be able to post
right.
things. You will get some, I'm sure you'll get comments, on these.
I
So,
do. And that's a great venue. Instagram has been great. Now, I'm not doing it as much as I should, but I am starting to see other people doing similar work, and
mhm,
that's satisfying to get reviews from them, and
mhm.
also to see what other people are doing. And it sort of, I remember when I was younger, I said, "Oh, I do junk art."
Mm, mm.
A lot of people are doing junk art nowadays, and it really, I think people do like my work, and they do get a kick out of it.
Yeah. I do think we need to lighten our lives a little bit. And I think that's what to me, that's what your work does. It just kind of, it's full of surprises, and
Yeah.
and unusual elements, being put together. So I think that's kind of fun. So you did share with me a photograph of an installation. Can you talk about the installation a little bit for me and tell me like where it was installed and what it's all about? Because it's hard to tell just from the photo.
I think it's still in my studio.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Uh, I what I did last winter in the studio, I have all these wonderful parts and pieces that I've collected over the years, and I said, just glue them together, start gluing them together, and then my ideas, they're all little tiny installations,
Hmm.
and my vision I have for this tiny little installations that I've glued together, they're a little wacky and strange, but I think once they're all together in a bigger scene, they're going to be quite spectacular. And so
Hmm.
that was my vision on that.
Yeah. I think some of the store windows in Gloucester and Rockport and Manchester could use a
Yeah.
taste of Hans Pundt. Seriously, you could really
I,
you could have some fun with that.
if you go back, if I go back a little bit, when I was at Local Colors,
Hmm.
uh, I did some fabulous window displays. This was the old Local Colors on the other side
Mhm.
of the street. I think Passports is there now. They had great windows there, and I did many installations there, Christmas installations,
Mhm.
very cool stuff. And yeah, I've done a few things downtown. I'd
Yeah.
like to do it again. I really want to get out there now and do these things because that's part of what I'm going to be doing.
Some of your pieces are a little bolder in terms of, either this, maybe the potential statements they could be making. Does anything come to mind as the most daring piece that you've ever made?
I did a piece, and I don't think it'll be shown, but because it's hard to photograph, it's a 3D piece.
Mm.
And I've never really worked with black, the color black. And a lot of toys are black. There's a lot of action figures that are sort of dark. And so I wanted to put all those together. And this was a little bit of a premonition, I think, before COVID, before our lockdown happened. During the campaign, it was so dark and so dismal. And I put this piece together, and it was really cool. And it has, at the very end, and part of it, a light part to it, a hope. But most of my pieces are fun.
Yeah, much more on the whimsical side, but that's okay, because
Right.
it's good to sometimes just get some of that stuff off your chest, right? And get it out there, right? So we've talked a lot about your materials, and we're going to show some photographs of your materials. And I have to say that I had to ask you the question when we were going back and forth. I'm not sure if I'm looking at your materials or an installation, because some material, the way you have them organized, they actually look like they could be an art piece. But there were all kinds of fun things. And I can certainly understand how some of the materials lead to their own destiny, in a sense, right? Now, by the way, that happens to me with sea glass. So I completely relate to that. Is that often the case, or do you actually start mostly with a concept and then choose the materials? And then, that's sort of one part of my question. And then the other part is, what's the most incredible thing you've ever found at a flea market that you just couldn't wait to use? So those are two-part question. Right.
I think my materials are my paint palette. And the more you have, the more fun you have. And same with collage. I have great ephemera. I have great magazines. And so it's just the palette that I'm working with. Do I have an idea ahead of time? Sure. If I'm working on a collage, I do have an idea. If I'm working on a 3D piece, it might be, yes, this is what I want to do. And then the materials will take it in a different direction. The most fun piece I had, I don't know if I have a fun piece or an exciting piece, but there have been some great adventures finding them. And when I go to flea markets in Europe, I'm usually fighting the kids in the toy box in the corner. There's the adult with a few extra euros that will buy my toys, and that's cool. So I've had a few incidences like that. I just love the hunt. Yeah, the hunt of finding ephemera, and I've got some really great old stuff, especially from Europe, and there again, the European influence is great in my mind.
They also have better flea markets, I think, too. So
they do, yeah. Both horticulturally and with my artwork, Europe is a big influence.
Yeah. Well, we're going to show some pieces. I think two that jumped out at me, I really enjoyed. One is Springtime, which is just so, I don't know, uplifting, I think. As we head into fall, I think the springtime is very uplifting. And then the other one is Flip Flop, which is completely different kind of piece, but certainly, again, a way of you expressing yourself. Just talk about Flip Flop for a second, just because it's so different.
Well, Flip Flop is one of my friends. It's sort of like this guy here.
Okay, so these are buddies. All right, so they're kind of a series.
Well, they could be. In the background, there's a bunch of. I've been making these faces, and
Okay.
they're hanging up down in the Willow Rest.
Oh, great.
For sale if you want to buy them.
Huh.
She's really sweet for me. So flip flop is a flip flop that I found on the beach. The yellow part of it is a worn out flip flop.
That's perfect. I had no idea. All right.
The other piece, springtime, is really nice. The people that bought my greasy pole, I brought it over there, and he said to me, "I would like you to take you out to the garage." And there on the table, two tables spread out, were a collection of wind-up toys that he had been gathering all his life. Someone thought, he should have a wind-up toy, so every birthday he got him, and he wanted to get rid of them, and he thought, nah, Hans will take it. And so that piece are, they're all birds and so forth, and they're all wind-up toys. So the piece is full of action if I wind them all up. And that's called springtime because they're all run by springs.
Oh, wow. I missed that part. So you can't really tell that from the photograph. Okay. That's great. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I'd like to take a moment here and show the video of your studio.
Well, we have the great fortune that I have a building in the backyard that is our sanctuary. Lynn has her studio downstairs, which is totally different than mine. It's very neat and organized, and that's the way she works. Mine is like a dumpster. And it's just full of toys. It's full of wood, metal, I wish I had twice the size. So it's quite a compilation. It's an installation in its own right.
Right. It certainly is.
Everybody, I should glue it together.
Yeah, that'd be great. And of course, we need to mention that Lynn is a master jeweler and very, very, very talented. And I know that to some extent, she's your creative partner. I would I would never have met you if it wasn't for Lynn. So we give her lots of credit for that. So now that we've taken a look at the video, I'd like to talk about going forward, because it looks like you are going to now be able to dedicate a lot more time to your work. And let's talk about what your artistic goal would be going forward. Is it to exhibit? Potentially, you have sold your work, so to sell, to teach. Tell us a little bit about what's in your mind as you go forward.
Well, right now, this summer has been all dedicated. Well, since I've retired, it's been dedicated to my yard, and I'm turning my piece of. I have been for the last 25 years, 30 years, turning this piece of property into a big collage in its own right. And so I'm dedicating my time to that. Winter's coming. I'll be up in the studio making more stuff. I'd love to share it. I just want people to have fun looking at it. What that entails, I need to start being a little more proactive in that. Instagram has been helpful, but I don't want to be on the computer all the time. It'd be fun to do a window downtown. And I just have to get off my duff and pursue things like that. So get a website, as I've been told to.
A few small things like that. Well, you have to be able to be found. I mean, that's the first thing, right? So, but I think you will, I think there's really a place today for this kind of work, because we need some happier, more fun things to look forward to. So I'm sure you won't have any problem, Hans, if you apply yourself the way you've done, with everything else you've done.
Well, thanks for that encouragement.
In the meantime, though, while you are putting all those other things together, it sounds like Instagram. What is your Instagram account? so people know how to reach you there.
Hashtag Hans Pundt.
Fabulous. There's only one. And
Yes,
then,
there's only one.
okay. And then
Same with
also on Facebook.
Facebook, Hans Pundt.
Okay, great. So you'll have to look out for people when they want to connect with you personally, right?
And
So
I will get in touch with them. I know I have to do all that stuff.
that's great. No, that's great. And did you want to be contacted any other way, by email or otherwise? Is that
Email would be fine. Yeah, and
great?
that's one of the dreams I've had is to share the property. And I don't want to have thousands of people coming in here. I
Mhm.
want it controlled because it's private.
Yeah.
And share. We do have a little gallery in our house that, well, our house is a museum too. I must say that it's full of stimuli and
Yeah.
beautiful objects and art. So
I remember coming to your gallery a long time ago, and I think I had to drop Julie off after one of our dates.
right.
So anyway, it is lovely. It's a beautiful piece of property. And I just can't wait for you to break out into this next phase. It's going to be lots of fun. So we'll finish up with a couple of more fun photos of your work. Catch and Release was one that really caught my attention. We'll flash that up on the screen.
I think that was the latest collage I did.
Oh, was it? Okay, fabulous. It's a great way to end. And so is there anything else you'd like to add before we close today?
Well, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's been a joy. I know it was hard getting the images to you because I'm not tech savvy, but I shouldn't say that. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank you what you've been doing. Highlighting artists on Cape Ann. It's been great. It's great, and I'm honored to be here. And I'm looking forward to getting out. This might
yes, no, that'll be fun. Well, thank you. Actually, it's not easy, right? So we're all in this together, as we say, especially in the arts community. So thank you.
There's a lot of artists.
That's true. That's true. So we're going to wrap up our interview with Hans Pundt, and we will make sure that you know how to reach out to him for your next fabulous window display and exhibit. And thank you for watching Cape Ann ARTWaves today. Thank you to our sponsors once again. We're looking out for those 2022 sponsors. So keep your checkbooks open, and also you can view this on the 1623 YouTube playlist. You can also see it promoted on Facebook and Twitter and on channel 12 cable television, and look for it in the weekly C-Arts e-blast. Details at 1623studios.org for anything else regarding Cape Ann ARTWaves. And that's it for today. Thank you.